Welcome to Oakl's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today, focus on a game called Sergeant Rock on the front line for the Game Boy Color. Now, Sergeant Rock is a franchise that's been around for like 70 or 80 years at this point. I just simply never heard of it before until this particular video or this particular game I went through. But it's a DC comic franchise that evidently was fairly popular back in like the 60s and the 70s. And he was a superhero that fought back in World War II. And sort of like Captain America, except I don't think he has many like superpowers and things like that. I think he's more like a G.I. Joe type character. And as the years have gone by, Sergeant Rock had been somewhat forgotten about. There have been a few reiterations and whatnot, but the core Sergeant Rock character was killed off by the very last bullet of World War II and was mostly written out of the DC franchise or DC universe from that point on. However, we are looking at a game from the 90s when they tried to revive Sergeant Rock a little bit, but they didn't really like set him into World War II setting for this game. It's more of like just a very stereotypical battle in a very stereotypical war, and sort of watered down a good bit from what Sergeant Rock possibly could have been. But this game here is pretty average. It's a overhead shooter game, and not very much story, not very great music. Gameplay is very much like a Contra on the NES as far as like the overhead view levels in that game, and very poor enemy AI. And I mean, it's not like the worst games, don't get me wrong. Like the last 2 weeks have been like really terrible games. This game is not on that level, but if you're going to load this game up to have like a really fun experience, you're probably not going to achieve too much of that. And there are better overhead army games that are out there than Sergeant Rock. But let's go ahead and dive into all that and more when we discuss Sergeant Rock for the Game Boy Color. Now, this particular game did get moved up into queue a bit because KMD Baby requested I cover it sooner than later. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below. And just like Sergeant Rock on the front line, I'll move it right on up in the queue. Now I like to start the videos off with the box art for the game first. And the box art does show Sergeant Rock right there in the center, being a true American hero, has his shirt open to show all of his muscles here. You know, got a gun in one hand, saving a fellow soldier in the other hand, the American flag flying in the foreground. I mean, they're really trying to basically, you know, puff Sergeant Rock up as high as they can for a, like I said, a true American hero. I don't know if this is an exact like picture from the actual comics or whatnot. I'm not familiar with the actual like art style, but it does appear like it very well could have been lifted directly from the comics. Now, as far as like describing the game in general, obviously you're a soldier, you're fighting in a war. I feel like it's a fine cover. If you picked this game up, you knew who Sergeant Rock was. It was an army game. You got what you paid for. Now, when you load it up here, it does say the developer of the game is BAM Entertainment, and I know nothing about BAM Entertainment except for one game that they made for the N64, and that was Beast Wars Transmetals that we got back in maybe 9th grade. Growing up, it was a Blockbuster exclusive, but we somehow got it off the internet at the same time, and it was a terrible, terrible fighting game. I loved Transformers, I loved Beast Wars, and I was so excited for this game. And it was like one of the worst games I ever played on the N64. And so when I saw BAM Entertainment was the developer of Sergeant Rock here, I was immediately disappointed. But this game is nowhere near as bad as Beast Wars. Beast Wars was a, like I said, just a broken, terrible mess of a game. This is a just very average game, or a little bit below average here. But anyway, the tile screen loads up here, and you do have a pretty cool looking tile screen. Definitely looks like it's like directly out of the comics here, and really makes it seem way more action oriented. And I don't know, more exciting than the game actually is here. But overall, a pretty good title screen. The music behind it is not all that great, and truth be told, the music throughout the entire soundtrack here is nothing really to write home about. But this is our first introduction to the game. But we go ahead and start up here, and we have a very short cutscene of Sergeant Rock receiving his missions here to capture a fort in MA56. And we go ahead and start our very first mission. Now, there are 4 missions in the game, and each mission is divided into 2 separate acts, which basically makes for 8 different levels throughout the game. We're going to go through every single one of them one at a time. Now, the first level here is going to take place in more of a countryside setting. You have some evergreen trees throughout, some small towns that you're going to journey through. And like I said earlier, it's going to be an overhead shooter, and you're going to notice it's very similar to Contra 1, the overhead levels there. And your character here is pretty responsive as far as like, you know, the D-pad moving him in whichever direction that you want to go in. You do have your diagonal movements instead of just simply a up, down, left, and right. And so it's a fairly responsive game. The A button is going to be your core weapon as far as like shooting your gun out, and B is going to be throwing grenades or dynamite if you pick up dynamite throughout the experience. Now, as you're going through here, you're going to be attacked by soldiers, so, you know, coming from the enemy side to attack you, and there are only going to be blue and gray soldiers in the very first level here, and the soldier AI is absolutely atrocious. They basically try to approach you, and they sort of like walk past you half the time. They don't really like lock onto you very well, and they only shoot out like 1 bullet for like every 4 or 5 bullets that you can shoot out. So you are way overpowered compared to them, and that doesn't change like throughout the entire game here. The game is not very hard. And if you do die, you can pretty much continue endlessly inside the game as well. But as you're journeying through here, you're taking out all these soldiers and whatnot that are trying to come at you. And you're also going to notice like all these little explosive barrels off to the side. And you can obviously shoot the barrels, they'll explode. But if you shoot the red barrels, that's where you're going to get your different power-ups for the game. You can get an invincibility helmet. You can also get like a rocket launcher. You can get a machine gun. You can get dynamite instead of grenades. And so you can upgrade your weapon a pretty good bit as far as like making yourself more powerful. But every time you die, you're going to lose those upgrades that you have and go back to your base settings. It only takes one shot against you to actually kill you off or to lose a life. And that may seem unfair to be only hit one time to lose your power-ups, but that's how Contra worked. And also, like I said, they only shoot one shot for like every 4 or 5 shots that you shoot. And so you're not going to die very often at all. But as you're going through here, you don't just simply have to attack with Sergeant Rock here. You can also get into a tank that appears about halfway through the level. And when you get inside the tank, you can of course shoot out your rockets from the tank. And you can also just simply run over the soldiers, which makes it way easier. But also the tank is not, invincible here. You get hit enough times with the tank and the tank does sort of have smoke coming out of it and you are forced to get out of the tank and you continue on to level from there. Now the first boss inside the game is going to be a fortress, and when you approach the fortress, there's a door in it, and the door is going to allow enemy soldiers to come out to try to attack you. They're pretty easy to take out because they're the exact same as all the other soldiers in the game, and so even if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed, they're not going to shoot at you very fast, and you can take them out pretty quickly here. Now when you finish up the first level, you do get a little cutscene, and Sergeant Rock says we've broken through the barrier, and that leads us into level 1-2. Now this level here is going to be pretty much exactly the same as the first level. The scenery is almost the same. The enemies are almost all the same. The only difference is going to be you can get a Jeep instead of a tank, and the Jeep is going to have a machine gun on it so you can mow down enemies a little bit faster, but you can also just simply run over them just like you could the tank. And so that's going to be the core difference in the level. Now when you get to the boss of level 1-2, it is once again a fortress here, but instead of just simply having one door for enemies to come out, now they have like little turrets up top going to be trying to shoot you, and you have to get basically grenades or your dynamite and throw it on top of the building to blow those turrets up. And only when all the turrets are destroyed and all of the enemies, the commander of the fort is going to come out, wave his little flag, a little white flag, and say that he has surrendered to Sergeant Rock. So mission number 1 is completely finished up here. We get another little cutscene to sort of brief us on our next mission, and it basically says that our soldiers are being held hostage at prison TA-71.2X9, whichever that means, and we need to rescue as many men as possible on our way to the prison. And so in level 2-1 here, we're basically journeying through a dead forest, because you have all these, or maybe it's like winter time here, because you have all these trees that obviously have no leaves on them, and the landscape here is very much of a barren wasteland of sorts. Truth be told, it reminds me a little bit of some of the areas in Mother 1 toward the end of the game, when you get to like the winter theme, which I guess sort of fits with the winter here, because like I said, all the trees are dead or they have no leaves on them. But to say that Sergeant Rock is trying to summon the energy of Mother 1 here, that'd be very much of a stretch. Very different games, very different quality of games, and just two totally opposite ends of the spectrum here. But it's very much of a dilapidated city as you're going through it, and you're also going to know some of your little fellow soldiers are being tied up off to the side, and you can rescue them as you're journeying through the level. I don't think it actually matters if you rescue any of them. You just simply get points for it. If you get enough points, you get like an extra life and things like that. But since there are unlimited continues, it doesn't really matter. So you can sort of just rush through this level and rescue none of your soldiers. And I don't think it'd make any difference at all, except you really wouldn't be the American hero that Sergeant Rock is hyped up to be. Now we get to the boss of the level. Once again, is another fortress. You're going to start seeing the pattern here. Almost every boss is going to be a fortress. And instead of one door with different cannons up top or different turrets, you're going to get 2 doors here. And you simply have to take out all of the enemies as they journey out. And then we get a little animation still here of Sergeant Rock saying, "Move out, men. I'm getting you out of here." Obviously trying to rescue the prisoners. Mission 2-2 here is pretty much exactly the same as before, but now we have like a little abandoned railroad in the middle. There's no train or anything like that. It's just going to basically be the same enemies we've encountered thus far in the game. When we get to the final boss here, after the Evergreen Forest, we're going to go up against basically another fortress, but now we have 3 doors of enemies coming out and turrets on top. And when we do finish up this area, we do rescue the soldiers out here, we empty the prison out, and then we have another little cutscene. It basically says, get the soldiers to the helicopter, but you don't get to get on the helicopter because we have another mission for you. We need to take you over to the jungle where there's a factory with new weapons that we have to take out. And so that leads us into mission number 3, where we're going to try to take out this factory and this arsenal. Now the jungle aesthetic here is, somewhat of a fresh pace, or at least something new aesthetic to look at, and very much more green here. You have different rivers throughout, you have little waterfalls in the background, and it'll be the exact same enemies all over again, except we get 2 new enemies in the game. Not very many of them, but we do get snakes in the game, and we also get an alligator, or a crocodile. Now we only get the crocodile 2 times, so you don't really get to see him very often. So don't kill him off too fast when you see him, because like that's could be almost your only opportunity for something new to take out here. The snakes are a little bit more common, but they're still nowhere near as many as far as like the men you're going to take out as you go. Now for this one, you do not get a tank, you do not get a jeep, but instead you get like a little boat. You journey down the river on your boat. Exact same mechanics. You know, you can shoot with the boat with your individual weapons, or you can throw out grenades, take out the soldiers. And when you get to the boss of the level, once again it's going to be a fort, but instead of taking on the fort, you know, as a human or a tank or a jeep, you're now going to be inside your little boat. And it's going to be the exact same mechanics. You know, fire your weapon, throw your grenades, take out the enemies, and when you finish it off here, you drive your boat straight through the factory, which leads us into level 3-2. Now you're going to start off on the river here once again. It's a little bit more hectic, but not too bad. You eventually get off, you get a jeep, you can journey through pretty much the same landscape of the jungle all over again. There is one part where you have like these giant rocket launchers that you come across. You don't have to destroy them, you don't have to do anything, but if you want to get out of the jeep here, you can throw your grenades and blow them up. I don't think there's any benefit to it unless you're simply going for a high score, which is rewarded in no way at the close of the game. But as you're going through it here, you can take out those rocket launchers, and you get to the final area here, and once again, guess what the enemy is, or guess what the boss is? It's going to be another giant fort as you fight against. And once again, there's turrets on the top, soldiers are coming out, take them all out, and when you finish it up here, you actually go into the fort, and you basically plant a bomb, and then you blow the fort up, and you walk away from the explosion like a cool fella here, just like the SNL skit, or what skit is that group? It's not SNL. I mean, it's on SNL, but what is it? It's got Andy Samberg in it, Will Ferrell. It's just, the song is Cool Guys Don't Look at the Explosions. Lonely Island, that's what I'm looking for, the Lonely Island. Sergeant Rock is the original Cool Guys Don't Look at Explosions. Then we get our final cutscene in the game here, and basically our final mission says we need to attack the headquarters from 8 sides, but then it says we need to go through the desert to get there. So it's like, are we doing 8 sides? Like, why not even bring up the idea of attacking from 8 sides if we're only going to be going through the desert to get there? Very confusing dialogue as far as like trying to keep a narrative here. The narration is nothing special. If this was a comic book like it came from, I cannot imagine like the writing being as terrible for the comic book as it is for this game. Otherwise, the comic book would not have survived at all. But anyway, for mission number 4-1 here, we are now in the desert. There's a little tent set up. There's a little water tower set up. Obviously, you know, very much of a desert aesthetic. Enemies, once again, exactly the same. No cool animals to look at. You eventually get to the enemy headquarters. You go inside there. Feels a little bit more like a, you know, actual Contra factory setting almost, as far as like having, you know, machine guns set up. It'd be more like a military base that you're actually infiltrating into. You go through here. The boss is, as you expected, another fort you're going to have to fight against. I really have nothing else to say about some of these bosses. They're just literally exactly the same. You have a cutscene here that basically says we need to wind up the operation. We go into 4-2, where once again in the headquarter aesthetic, there are tons of turrets. There's just a huge variety of them actually. Instead of just the single ones that turn in a different direction, now we have like a double shot turret. There's one giant gun turret you're going to go through, and you can sort of rush through a lot of this. You don't have to destroy any of them if you don't want to. When you get to the final boss here, it is an enormous fort you're going to go up against. All different types of turrets that you've encountered thus far in the game, they're there. Enemy soldiers are going to be coming out, they're there. They basically did the greatest hits of everything in the game, except for the alligator and except for the snakes. They really should have added those in there, like, you know, have them slithering out of the fort here, but they didn't. And so you eventually throw your grenades up there, take all of those out, and once you've taken that out, you once again go in there, set the bomb off, and you explode the enemy headquarters. Then we march back to our helicopter. We get on the helicopter, we fly away, and we get a nice little cutscene here of Sergeant Rock being victorious. And that's the close of the game. It says the end. There's no credits. There's really no reason to go back and play the game again unless you simply want to get a high score. It's a very easy game, very quick game, maybe like an hour to go through, if that. It's not a terrible game. There's just simply not a lot to the game. It's very basic. If you enjoy the Contra levels, or you enjoy Jackal on the NES, but you don't really want much of a challenge, you sort of want to rush through it, this is a okay game. The music's not great, the story's not great, the animations, they're, you know, fairly colorful here. Nothing wrong with the animations, but overall it's just simply a very empty experience. I'd probably give the game a 3.5 out of 10, maybe 4. If you enjoy overhead shooters, you'll obviously enjoy it more, but just not a game you're going to really ever want to go back and play again. And if you enjoy the comic books, I really don't think there's enough in this game here to like bring the comic books to life to make you want to, you know, journey through it for that reason either. And so, like I said, 3.5 is going to be probably my final score for the game. If you ever played Sergeant Rock on the front line, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.